I'm at Arizona State University. This project I'm working on is using delay Spectra to estimate power spectrum in MWA phase 2, along with some people here at Brown, Johnny and one of his students, Samantha. I am one of those 42 people who download MWA data and not an MWA member at this time. So you found one already, Melanie. So this data I'm using here is the exact same data as Wen-Yang, and it uses Wen-Yang calibration solutions, the hybrid sky plus redundant cal. I don't want to talk about that too much. The power spectrum estimation pipeline is something even different from FHT Epsilon or RTSO chips. I used something I wrote called the simple delay spectrum, the simple DS pipeline. Originally developed for use with Tabor and Hera, highly redundant arrays. Its goal is just to be simple. Originally, Tabor wanted to do lots of fancy math, use sky-based covariance estimation, and found that it wasn't as great as we thought. So we backed off, tried to focus more on input simulations and input noise models, just take an FFT and see what comes out. Produced for a paper some very interesting results. We looked at the distribution of, that's really hard to see. Can you see this shape? Yeah. Okay, it's going to be important later. We looked at the distribution of statistics for baselines, individual baselines across groups of redundant types of baselines, and found that some were much less redundant than others. So we threw them out, and our data got better. And then we even produced some noise-limited power spectrum estimates. In redshift bands of interest, which are black here, and our input simulation of the sky gave us a good idea of, the things we see near delays of 0, whereas we expect foregrounds to dominate, are actually dominated by foregrounds. And our noise model just kind of reaffirmed that the theoretical noise estimate we put in green was somewhat legitimate. And we produced some power spectrum results, right? So this is like Wen-Yang, but it's a different axis from the two that Nicole showed. Here in black, our highest confidence is a bad word, but the things we're most trusting of from the paper collaboration in terms of limits. The paper is currently in review, but mostly, hopefully not too preliminary. But what we want to know is what can we learn about MWA phase 2 from something like simple DS. Great, so we plotted, I found the MWA, zoomed in on the hex, and I picked out 5 different groups of redundant baselines. 14, harmonics of 14 meters up to 70 from the 2 different hexes. The statistics, as you might assume, are really bad on 70-meter baselines because there's only about 7. But it's going to be interesting to see what we can learn about them. So, for each group of redundant baselines, this pipeline, looks at the median absolute deviation, which is like standard deviation, but with medians instead of means, across redundant groups. For this particular image, is a 28-meter group. And one thing you'll notice is that the YY polarization, which I believe is east for MWA. I don't actually.
YY is
actually north-south? Yeah. This is even more interesting.
If you look at RTS output, that is not true.
But what you're looking at,
I'm assuming you labeled it according to MWA convention and not Hera convention.
I just plotted Y, it gave me Y, and it gave me this.
Okay.
So
you use Python data, that's north-south.
Yeah, the north-south then. It's significantly less redundant, which is actually contrasting the information we just learned, than the east-west, which maybe isn't crazy because this might just be dominated by the galactic center. Because this is a zenith pointing around LSD of 0, right there, on the plot. So the galactic center is going to be way off in the side lobe on the horizon. But what can we learn about this? So we take the median absolute deviation, calculate the modified z-score for every baseline, histogram bin it, and then kind of see, well, what can we learn? So starting with 14 meter, say, well, our data for each polarization, or for 2 different days, even in odd days of data, our north simulation in gray, they don't look the same. It means that we have some noise in our data. That doesn't sound crazy. But there's some baselines which are really, really bad. So they always just throw them away, and that's what I plot in the dashed line. And things get a lot better for this baseline. Say, great, let's just throw those away for every baseline because they're probably bad antennas at this point. And it's really good for this 28 meters, but then what we find is that different sets of baselines are different kinds of redundant. things that are bad for one set of baselines, the same antenna is not necessarily, go through a little more, the same bad for the other baseline. So there's baseline dependent redundancies in the hexes. It's going to be great fun for whoever has to dig through that data. And then, like I said, the statistics are so bad we can't really make any inferences about 70-meter baselines. But they actually do look quite a bit like the noise simulation, which is nice. There's some good data in there. Or not, or it's all bad. So then I took a simulation, I put a galactic plane in on the horizon, using the Daily Accosted GSM, the 18 sources that Ruby makes and adds to Gleam. And then I plotted it next to data, and I said it doesn't look anything like that. You can see there's these fingers in the simulation, which if you squint, you might notice, and then I honestly don't know what this is. And it's so noisy in the data, I don't even know if it's there. But that's fine. We'll run this through the fire spectrum pipeline and see what we get out. Why not? And what we find is this coarse band, which I'm plotting, which everyone else took away. So you can see what they actually look like in the delay spectrum. This is one-dimensional versus delay instead of tau, or instead of k. But there are, lots of noise-dominated regions, even for a simple Fourier transform along the delay axis or the frequency axis for each baseline. And this is about 30 minutes of data. So it's looking good so far, and I think what we can hope to say about something like this is that even with more data, we can hope that we could integrate somewhere where we can actually find interesting systematics, like what is actually causing out this actually lost by that. So we're going to be way ahead now. We can find out what maybe something is that causes the non-redundancies that we see changing as a function of baseline length. So it's very much work in progress. About as far as we get right now, I'm saying I have some noise limited bins, but it's really discouraging just seeing noise limited bins in 30 minutes of data for just Fourier transform on flag data. Don't try to do any kind of fancy foreground removal or anything. Just less than both the S and Z. That's all I do. That's it. That's literally all I have.
Point out what the distance in the amplitude in your simulation.
Yeah, this is, so I honestly have no clue. So I simulate, I'll go back.
Prism simulation?
This is Prism simulation. And Prism, if you're not familiar, was originally built to simulate the MWA. And the original ones agreed very well, maybe it was an effect or two in the delay spectrum.
Years ago.
That was many years ago, and so something must have changed. And there was a considerable amount of hacking that had to go on just to be able to get the simulation to run for the MWA now. So I'm not really confident to say it's either code or model or some combination of the both. Yeah, yes it does.
So when I get that working, that might help.
That is the biggest thing I'm looking forward to.
Tomorrow, but those 14-meter effects baselines are pathologically right.
Yeah.
This particular is a 28 meter, which is still
Also
pretty
still
bright,
an outlier.
and baselines that are actually normally thrown away, like for things like Wen Yang's, like they fall within the wavelength. They usually just throw out for an image of that.
But if you go forward, you know 10 to the 13 is wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
There's no way that this could be the actual power.
So
Yeah.
we can have some arguments whether it should be 10 to the 15 or 10 to the 16, but the data, but the simulation is missing 6.
Yeah. And
Or some other thing going.
or the beam is just so bad.
So one other thing.
It doesn't, you change your beam, you don't lose that much. You'd have to have a beam that was 3 degrees across, or something like that. It has to be just.
Yeah, it could be broken.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. that was the point. The simulation beam just.
There's got to be a 10 to the 15 on that.
So one of the problems is we have yet to have seen this in an image, right? So that's one of the customers.
Yeah, try to make an image, but when you only simulate one 28-meter baseline, you just get streaks across the sky, right? So it wasn't even worth it. Yeah, so I'm one of the people that's pushing on Brenna to get the MWA beam and
So qualitatively, these middle ones, half an hour of data and stuff like that, but you said you were surprised to see noise. Is
Maybe-
that sort of
maybe not surprised, but encouraged.
okay?
right? There's no obvious systematic that dominates so these regions are the things that, like in Nicole and Wayne getting spot, the things you actually see.
Yeah.
So it's encouraging that there's no obvious systematic along the delay axis for 30 minutes.